defence analyst. He's just been working throughout the Middle East, so has first-hand witness of events in Syria and Lebanon, and for that matter, Gaza. We mustn't forget our reporting of Gaza. James, welcome back to the programme. On the future of Syria, everyone seems to be holding their fingers crossed, or maybe multiple fingers crossed, that this fledgling administration can be inclusive enough to take the nation forward. What's your assessment?
Yeah, and rightly so. They should be very, very suspicious as what's going to take place. And it's unclear over the next few months will be determined exactly what or exactly how Abu Mohammed Jolani will be able to bring all of these groups together. Of course, the most famous group being mentioned in the media is the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. But you have to remember there are several other jihadi groups. They have a Salafist background, and they also took various parts of Syria along with Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. And this is the problem. Can Jolani and his prime minister bring those groups together, or are they going to do exactly what took place in Lebanon, in Iraq, and in other places, in Libya, and just branch off into their own areas? Now, I've just actually seen, coming from Israel, and Israeli news have been reporting this for the last hour, a video is circulating on social media. Now, it's unverified. We don't know where it's come from, but it claims a member of the Druze community in the southern Syrian village of Hadar is calling for Israel to annex that side of the Golan Heights, in other words, the Syrian side of the Golan Heights, because they fear Islamists may enter into their town. So they say we'd rather the Israelis protect us than us be left completely in the field without knowing who is going to be taking over this part of the land. And that's where the uncertainty is coming from.
And it's interesting, we've been reporting on those developments. Incursions, probably too strong a word to use, but certainly Israeli forces have been adjusting the border a bit with Syria, haven't they, since the fall of the regime, in order, they say, to better protect themselves.
Very much so. It's been a strategic master plan from Israel. It's actually some of the most comprehensive, intensive bombing that has been seen in the last few days. Israel has successfully destroyed the Syrian MiG-29s and the rest of the Air Force, its air defense systems, its navy, its army assets. Most of the chemical weapons depots have been eliminated. Now the IDF and its ground forces are sitting comfortably in the buffer zone of the Golan Heights on the Syrian side by Mount Hermon to prevent any other infiltration into Israel. They've also talked about a similar October the 7th occurrence could happen, and that's the reason why they've said this morning that they will certainly be on the Syrian side of the Golan Heights for throughout the entire winter and probably into the spring, just to see how things develop in Syria. I mean, this past week has been unprecedented when it comes to unfolding events within the Middle East. I've been covering these events in the region since the early 90s, in the days when Saddam Hussein of Iraq invaded Kuwait. And I have to tell you, I mean, I've got a pretty good understanding of the culture, the people, the history of the Middle East, but not since June 1967, the day of the Six-Day War, has the balance of power changed so significantly in a matter of a few days. Now, the axis of Iran and its proxies, Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, they've obviously been greatly diminished. You've also got Assad, who, of course, is gone. Moscow says he is in Moscow. There's no confirmation of that, and I'm still wary of where Assad and his family may be. But that's neither.
You think they might not be there? They might not be there?
I think there's a possibility that the TASS news agency came out very quickly to say he has arrived in Moscow, but yet the flight which took off disappeared from the radar. It's unclear, but those just are my personal feelings. Okay. Maybe they will release some evidence in the foreseeable future, but the Russians don't need to do that.
James, at the risk of trying to simplify what is a far from simple part of the world and a far from simple history, just your assessment here on the other countries involved in the Israeli conflict with Hamas, the Israeli conflict with Hezbollah in Lebanon, and that reduction of influence in Iran. Do you think the events in Syria make it more likely that some form of peace or accommodation might be easier to achieve now with the other two neighbours?
Well, I think there are huge challenges ahead because now Iran knows that it's been hurt very badly. It's lost its proxies. Hamas, as I mentioned, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Assad, and now it could feel that it's just been backed into the corner and it might move ahead with its nuclear ambitions. That is a big negative as far as the whole of the Middle East is concerned. And the Americans, you can guarantee that President Trump comes into power in January the 20th, he will be looking at this very, very closely. And I'm quite certain he's not ruling out, any type of hit on the nuclear facilities in Iran. Elsewhere, it remains to be seen what will happen with Syria. I don't think the Syrian government, even if it is Hayat Tahrir al-Sham and they manage to get control of the various different militias and they bring them within their fold, they have no plans to make peace with Israel. But it could be what Abu Muhammad Jalani is saying, is that he just wants to focus on the country, the stability of the country. That's good news for Israel. It's good news for Syria. As far as Lebanon goes, as long as Hezbollah has been diminished, Lebanon, of course, is quite happy to build up their country because they've pretty much been bankrupt for the last few years. And Gaza, it remains to be seen what is likely to take place on a hostage deal in the next few days because, of course, Jake Sullivan is back in the region. He was in Israel yesterday. He leaves again today, the U.S. envoy, and he's looking very closely at a hostage situation whereby 30 hopefully alive hostages from Gaza will be released in return for Palestinian prisoners. That will be phase one, and then it depends how phase two will work out.
James Marlow, thank you very much indeed. Foreign and defence analyst, updating us throughout the Middle East and the prospect